Hi there again, and Linda's here again. Welcome to watercolor, Spirit of Watercolor, that is. And it's a very spiritual practice, and so I'm really glad you're back and joining me again today. And we are going to talk about paint, watercolor paint. It's the most wonderful medium, very exciting, and I've got many tubes of watercolor paints, and too many probably. But the thing is that to get the most success of your paints, the most wonderful, transparent, luminous, gorgeous colors that just wow yourself and everyone else that looks on your work, it's good to understand how these paints work, okay? Pick a favorite brand. You need to try a few brands and find out which you like. I've used Winsor & Newton, very common one, and I've used a lot of this Daniel Smith paint, which is my favorite right now, and may always be, I don't know, it's just what I found works for me, and there's so many other brands to explore. I use a few others as well, but we'll leave that up to you. I would suggest you go with professional grade paint as soon as you can. It will make all the difference in your paint. The student grade like cotton is good, but it doesn't really give you an idea of the potential of what your work can be, okay? You get these rich, concentrated colors that do so much for you and that bring the joy of the painting to your work. So this is something that I can't stress enough, okay? Now the main tips we want to talk about is we're going to break it up into different parts. So today we'll start with the overall, let's just look at watercolor. What are the qualities of the watercolor, and break that into different parts. The first thing about watercolor, different than other paint mediums, is that it's transparent. You can see through to the white of the paper, which is unique and special to watercolor. And then there are the transparent paints in watercolor that are more transparent, and those that are less transparent to those that are more opaque. And there are also another kind of watercolor paint which is called gouache, and that is basically an opaque watercolor. So we're not going to look at those because we're talking in my videos mainly about the one I love the most, okay, and that you may find you do as well, or you may move to the other mediums. You'll have to explore and see, but for me it's transparent watercolor. Okay, now the other things that we will look at in future videos will be that some of the watercolor paints have a more staining quality. They'll stain the paper, you can't lift them off. That makes a difference, because if you're going to layer or glaze, as we call it, paint over the watercolor, it's going to become more successful if you put the staining colors down first and then the less staining ones over top. If you put the less staining ones at the bottom and then you put more color on top, they will blend and blur in a way that isn't the way you want it to look. They can mix and become muddy as opposed to being these glowing, luminous, beautiful colors. Okay, now so there's that, and then there's also granulation, which is the third one, which will again be another tips and tricks video, which is when you get granulation in the paints. Some of the paints have transparency and granulation, some are more opaque and granulated, some are transparent and do not have any granulation, and that is the breakdown, okay? Just trying to put it in a nutshell for you and to kind of get your head thinking in that organized way, okay? Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to swatch these paint colors, the ones you've chosen of yellows, reds, and blues, which is what most people start with, and maybe a few earth colors, you know, like the raw umbers and siennas, and colors that are the, you know, earthy ground colors and tree colors, and so, you know, of the earth. And you may have some of those. But, you know, typically I say don't buy black and don't buy white unless you're going to get a really opaque white, which is something we talked about in our video that we've already done about whites. So what we want to talk about is basically the transparencies and the qualities of watercolors and get that figured out. And then we will go on to talk more about how you can take these paints and you can swatch them, and then like through a black magic marker to see which ones are more transparent. And I will show you a picture, actually from a book that I used for many, many years as I taught watercolor, just as an example for people to see. And you can find out from your own paints which ones are more transparent and the ones that are more opaque, and keep that like in the notebook or a sketchbook or something for yourself to refer back to. Okay? Okay, so here's the example I was going to show you from my book. And this is a book called Basic Watercolor Techniques. And this book is by Rachel Wolf and Greg Albert. And these, Rachel Wolf is an artist I've followed for years, and she did this book in collaboration with another artist, and Basic Watercolor Techniques. And so she shows an example, and I have done this, and it is very helpful. So you put the black magic marker swatches through on a sheet of watercolor paper. Maybe you want to use student grade paper if you don't want to use the best of your paper for this, okay? And then you have your transparent paints, or well, just basically take all your paints, and I would just start with your yellows and maybe your reds and your blues. You will start to see, if you can see through to the black marker, that your paint is very transparent. And the less you can see through, the more opaque the paint is. It's a real simple trick, right? Talk about tips and tricks that work. And you can kind of find out actually, if you do these swatches with a flat brush, you see how you can just get that sort of rectangular shapes across the marker. Then you can actually also see probably some granulations or non-granulations, and then you have some things you can refer back to on this sheet that maybe you put in a sketchbook or keep with you. You can buy one of those books that's a sketchbook, and you could keep track of how the quality of your paints are. And so there's no exact way to do this. I mean, you can do it the way they did it here, or you can do it like I said and just choose your colors and see what happens, and you can kind of find out what your paints are as far as transparency and granulation, and that's, you know, a real nutshell, easy way to see that. Okay? All right. All right, so that's the first tip, and that's the first breakdown of watercolor paints, and we're gonna get more into this in our tips and tricks videos. So welcome back. I'm excited to really start to talk about the paints finally, and to think about them as we are departing right now from some of the brush technique and the other techniques we've been looking at, which are non-brush techniques like salt and saran wrap and so forth. And those videos you can check out on my YouTube video and take a peek at. And so just kind of go in and look at Spirit of Watercolor, Linda Brokaw, and then, you know, Google in or write in, type in, you know, what you're trying to learn about, and there'll be some either demonstrations on the techniques or these tips and tricks to help you to just enhance your work and get a better idea of the glorious things, the beautiful things watercolor can do. Thanks so much for watching today. Let's get started on these. We'll start. If you like this video, click on the like, and please subscribe, and we'll just keep growing together between our paints and paintings. And another day I want to talk to you also down the road, of course, about, you know, how to, you know, create a gallery, something we'll be doing together, because I'm also needing to put together a website gallery, because nowadays, after COVID and during COVID, we've, you know, been doing more and more on the computer and online, and I think that's a lot of that's going to stick. So let's learn about that together too, and that'll be a whole nother area of watercolor, is how to, you know, photograph our work and get it online so that other people can look at it, enjoy it, and maybe even buy it. How about that? Wouldn't that be something? Okay, thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.